There was a time when fall wasn't cozy for me. It wasn't about candles, quilts, or pumpkin cookies fresh from the oven. For years, autumn carried fear. When September slipped into October, my heart would start to race. And by the time November drew near, I could barely breathe. The world celebrated fall with pumpkin spice and hay rides, but instead I dreaded it. The shortening days, the darkness, the quiet, it all pulled me back into memories that I just did not want to face. I write more about those seasons in my memoirs. I will link them below if you're interested. They're over on Amazon. But here, I'm just going to say this. Autumn didn't feel safe. And for a long time, it felt like survival. I stand here today in a very different fall. A fall filled with candles, baking, art, cozy routines, and the quiet rhythms of homemaking that God used to heal me. This is my story of how the season I once feared became the season that I absolutely loved the most. Back then, autumn was heavy. The sound of leaves scratching across the porch, it didn't make me smile. It made me shiver. The early sunsets weren't cozy. They were suffocating. Even the smell of wood smoke, something so many people love, would make my chest tight. I wasn't living. I was surviving. Folding laundry felt so mechanical. And stirring soup felt empty. And lighting a candle, well, it just felt pointless. Even in those hollow motions, something was stirring. Looking back, I realized God was planting seeds of healing, even in my brokenness. Folding laundry may not have felt like much, but it was proof that I could still create order. Stirring soup, it may not have been glamorous, but it reminded me that I could still nourish myself. Lighting a candle, it may not have banished the fear, but it whispered that light was still possible. And at that time, I didn't know those little acts, they would become my lifelines. You know, healing rarely happens in big moments. I used to think it would. I imagined healing as a light switch. One day I'd wake up and all the fear, the anxiety, the heaviness, it would just be gone. I'd look in the mirror. I'd finally recognize the woman staring back. But it wasn't like that. Healing crept in slowly, almost quietly enough to miss if I wasn't paying attention. It began in the smallest ways. One September, when the days first began to shorten and the evenings carried that faint coolness in the air, I lit a pumpkin spice candle. Such a simple act, striking a match, touching it to the wick, and watching that flame catch. But as that little flame flickered, something shifted inside me. The glow was so soft, but it softened the edges of my fear too. I can remember sitting on the sofa that evening, pulling an old quilt across my lap. That quilt wasn't new. It had frayed corners, threads loose from years of use. But when I wrapped it around my shoulders, instead of dread, I felt comfort. It was like my home was whispering, "You're safe here." It was the first time in a very long time that autumn didn't feel like a threat. That same fall, I picked up a paintbrush, almost by accident. I had absolutely no plan, no real idea of what I was doing. Dipped the brush into some burnt orange, and I began painting a pumpkin. The lines were uneven, shading wasn't perfect, but when I finished, I looked at that simple little pumpkin and I thought, this is mine. I hung it on the wall, not because it was art, but because it was a piece of me. Suddenly, my small home, it felt alive in a way that it never did before. That painting, it was a reminder that even broken hands could still create something beautiful. And then came the baking. Not bread, but pumpkin cookies. I can still remember the feel of the dough, soft and sticky, fragrant with cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves. And as the cookies baked, that smell filled every corner of my small home. It wasn't just the scent of sugar and spice, it was the scent of safety. When they cooled, I spread cream cheese frosting thick on top, the kind that melts just a little and slides down the edges. Dusted them with a sprinkle of cinnamon because details matter, and I bit into one while it was still warm, and tears started falling down my cheeks. Not because the cookie was perfect, definitely wasn't, but because for the very first time, I felt a sweetness in a season that I once feared. That bite of cookie, it tasted like hope. It tasted like home. And in that moment, I realized something that I never fully understood before. Homemaking, it wasn't just survival. It was soul work. Folding a quilt, lighting a candle, painting a pumpkin, baking cookies. These were not meaningless chores or hobbies. They were the quiet ways that God was piecing me back together. I spent so many years waiting for healing to come in a big old sweeping moment. Instead, it came in little flickers, a little candlelight, came in brush strokes, seasons of cinnamon, and old quilts draped across weary shoulders. Each act of homemaking, it was a declaration. I'm still here. I'm still creating. I'm still living. The world might see cookies, paint, or folded laundry, but I saw evidence that my life was not over. That fall, every small thing, it became so special. The candle wasn't just a scent, it was peace. The painting wasn't just decoration, it was expression. The cookies, they weren't just dessert, they were healing. Looking back, I can see God's hand in all of it. He didn't give me one big dramatic rescue. He gave me gentle, daily reminders that He was with me and that I could heal, that the season I once feared could become the season that I loved. Even now, every September, I repeat those rituals. I light candles, I pull out quilts, I paint, and I bake pumpkin cookies with cream cheese frosting. It's not about the candle or the quilt or the cookies. It's about what they mean. They mean I am safe. They mean I am healed. They mean my home is no longer a place of fear, but of peace. Healing rarely happens in an instant. More often, it comes one cookie at a time, one brush stroke at a time, one candlelit evening at a time. And maybe that's why I've come to love my small home so much. Because in a small home, the little things matter more. My home isn't big. In fact, if you were to walk through it with a critical eye, you might call it cramped. The rooms are small, closets, they're shallow, and the kitchen counters fill up faster than I like to admit. But over time, I've come to see that small homes are often the best places for healing. Because in a small home, nothing is wasted. Every corner matters. Every shelf holds meaning. Every quilt draped across the sofa isn't just decoration. It's an embrace waiting to be pulled close. In fall especially, my home feels alive. The oven warms every inch of space. The smell of pumpkin cookies drifts through the air, clings to the curtains. A single painting hung on the wall, even a simple one of a pumpkin or a tree, even the scarecrow that I painted for the kitchen. It transforms the room, transforms the home. You don't need endless square footage to create peace. You just need some gratitude. I used to see my home as a limitation. I compared it to all the magazine pictures that I would constantly scroll through. Houses with wide open kitchens and big cathedral ceilings. I would think for years, if I just had more space, maybe I'd feel more whole. But you know, the truth God whispered to me was this: healing doesn't require more space. It requires more presence. And in a small home, you can't help but be present. When I'm baking cookies, the oven doesn't just fill the kitchen, it fills the whole house. When I light a candle, its glow, it stretches to every single corner. And when the quilt comes out of the dryer, I can wrap it around myself, and it's so warm. It'll still catch its warmth lingering in the air around me. A small home, it will hold you close. Sometimes that closeness is exactly what a hurting heart needs. You know, there were days when I thought the walls of my house pressed in way too tight, like I couldn't breathe. But over time, I began to see the gift in that closeness. It meant I couldn't ignore the little things. It meant that I had to notice the way the sunlight spilled across the floor in the morning, the way the smell of cinnamon lingered long after the cookies cooled, the way laughter echoed louder because there wasn't space for it to get lost. In the fall, that awareness, it becomes even sharper. The crisp airs, it'll sneak in through the smallest cracks. Sound of leaves rustling outside the window is unmistakable. Glow of a single lamp, it can make the whole room look golden. It's as if the season itself is reminding me that healing, it doesn't require more. It just requires enough. Enough warmth, enough gratitude, enough presence. Think about how often we chase bigger and better in life. bigger homes, bigger paychecks, bigger closets. But in my small home, I've learned that enough is more than enough. Enough is the candle burning on the counter while I stir soup. Enough is a plate of pumpkin cookies cooling, the frosting melting just slightly as I dust cinnamon across the tops. Enough is a quilt on the sofa, waiting for me to sink into its comfort at the end of the day. Enough is my faith, anchoring me in a God who never leaves. I used to dread fall. My heart would race waiting for November to come. But now, through years of healing, homemaking, and faith, autumn feels so much different. It feels like peace. The same season that once triggered fear now gives me stability. Instead of panic, I feel secure. Instead of bracing for darkness, I breathe in light. Peace at home isn't just about quilts and pumpkin cookies, though I do love those things. It's about knowing that my life is anchored, my family is safe, and God has given me a new foundation. That's what homemaking has taught me. Security, it doesn't always look like a bigger paycheck, a bigger house, or a picture-perfect life. Real security is faith, gratitude, and the comfort of knowing you are safe in the place that you call home. Homemaking in the fall, it becomes a rhythm of peace. Sweeping the porch while leaves piled in the corners. Folding flannel sheets with cool air drifting through open windows. Stirring soup slowly, letting that steam fog the glass. Lighting candles until every room glowed. Painting pumpkins while pumpkin cookies baked in the oven. Even roasting marshmallows and having s'mores in our backyard. These routines, ordinary and small, they become the way that I climb out of trauma, PTSD, isolation. The healing, this didn't just become instant. It has come one quiet moment at a time. But fall has become my season of gratitude. Proof that God redeems what once was feared. When I think back to the seasons when I dreaded fall, when every day felt like a countdown to November's shadows, I realize what a miracle that this home has been. It was here, in these tight spaces, that I learned to breathe again. It was here that I discovered peace doesn't come from square footage. It comes from surrender. In my small home, gratitude has room to grow, even when closets don't. Healing has space to take root, even when counters are cluttered. Love can fill the walls, even when they stand close together. So yes, my home isn't big, but it is mine. It is enough. And in the fall, it is alive with the warmth of cookies, candles, quilts, and quiet healing. Fall, it no longer belongs to fear. It belongs to peace, stability, and the simple truth that God redeems what once was broken. Maybe you've had a season like mine. Maybe autumn doesn't feel cozy to you. Maybe it feels heavy. Maybe the calendar turning towards certain months makes your chest tight. If that's you, hear me. You are not alone. I've lived through falls that's made me dread every single day. But I've also lived to see falls filled with joy, peace, and gratitude. Healing doesn't come overnight, but it does come. For me, it came in homemaking, in painting, in baking pumpkin cookies topped with cream cheese frosting and a sprinkle of cinnamon, in lighting candles, in sitting by a campfire with the one I love. In the ordinary routines, that became sacred. And if it happened for me, it can surely happen for you too. Joy is still possible. Healing is still happening. And even the seasons that once held fear can one day be filled with peace.